everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Again, Dan, Jennifer, you guys have been, amazing rock stars, amazing leaders in your communities. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my experiences in Flutter. I've been running this Flutter workshop for in a couple of GDGs already, and it has been a huge success. Randall has been a true supporter of all of those. So again, thank you for coming again. But yeah, this is gonna be I try to condense it to make sure that everybody gets it in the amount of time allocated. This is a Flutter workshop, very beginner friendly. No installation required, and we're going to be using Dartpad web. So this is a web-based IDE that you will be able to code Flutter in on your browser without having to install anything. I'm going to be dropping some of the links in here, and also I'm going to be doing a very small, like, interactive session with you guys, because that's kind of like I want to keep it going. So let me, first of all, we're going to be using Dartpad Dev. For those of you who don't know it, there's the link, dartpad.dev, and then you're able to code in Flutter. You can even like grab the whole code and everything that you build in there, and you can, for example, you can deploy it on a physical device like I'm just showing right now. This is the application that we're going to be playing with in this workshop, and then you're going to be able to like take this code, leverage it for your own applications and whatnot. So again, just a little bit about myself. Actually, let me start sharing a few slides that I have just so that we can wrap a few things up and do some introductions. So let me share my screen real quick. And let me know, guys, when you can see my screen. Can you confirm that you can see my screen here?
Yep, we see yep, there you're in presentation mode now. Yep.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much again, Dan, Jennifer, for the invitation, GDG Mountain Region, all of you guys, everybody present. I'm Roman. I am a GDG Northeast mentor. I'm a Flutter developer at Philips. One of the things that I'm even more passionate about than even Flutter or coding is actually sharing, collaborating, like Rustam was mentioning, like doing these type of events that actually are building communities. And this is what I'm really passionate about. So I'm really humbled to present to you this Flutter hands-on workshop that I put together myself. I created even the code labs specifically for these type of events. I remember you, Dan, mentioning a while back when you said, "Oh, I love the the quick labs and the code labs, but some of them are just copy paste, and the knowledge doesn't stick." So I took that also as a note and say, okay, yeah, you could have like a mixture of that, like. You can create a code lab where you actually have the person code without just having to do copy paste. Yeah, there are certain things that are maybe tedious or whatever, but then I have like a mixture of elements of allowing you to do some coding on your own, and also some help you and something to help you, like you can do copy paste also for the sake of the so that I can help you move along. But yeah, I took that as a note also, and thank you for that feedback. That was really good, and I took it personal and say, no, I think we should do something about that, because I even felt like that the same way. So just a couple of housekeeping chores. I just wanted to let you guys know that I also have a YouTube channel where I post regularly about Flutter, and I do a lot of things on web, Firebase. I've been focusing a lot on Flutter right now, so you can follow me and subscribe on my YouTube channel. You can follow the links there. I can drop them in a bit later also. I also do, I'm going to start doing, I used to do it a few weeks back where I did like live streaming on YouTube and Twitch about like Flutter or Angular, Firebase, and all of those. So I will be letting you guys know. If you also follow me on Twitter, I also post there regularly on the events that I hold about like Flutter workshops like this. Also talks where I speak, and I do like some like engaging activities and whatnot. So again, please, you can follow me. You can take a look at my channel and whatnot. This talk is about Flutter. So I know that here there's a lot of people who know about Flutter. We have some GDs in Flutter in Dart, like Randall. Again, those of you who don't know about Flutter and are just watching right now, so Flutter is this proprietary framework developed by Google, open sourced, where you can, with one single code base, you can develop mobile, embedded, desktop, web. You can target all those platforms with one single code base by coding it in Dart. So this has been an amazing addition to the again, the already saturated market of like mobile native platforms. But Flutter has actually stood out of the pack, and it actually made a name for itself in the very short years that it has been on the market. And it has been a delight for me to jump in this platform and be such a prolific developer, creating applications in Flutter. And that's exactly what I want people to know and bring people more into the fold. So I want to make this session interactive. So I would appreciate if you guys can join at slido.com with the code 491853, and then we're gonna make it a little bit interactive. I just want to get some feedback from you. I want to get like our developer creative juices going by just going to slido.com. I'm even gonna join just so that I can monitor also the questions in there. You can send me questions in there as well. But let's join at slido.com with the code 491853 to do a little bit of a interactive session before we go and do the coding in Dartpad. So please join me there. I'm going to go to the next slide. And I just wanted to at least gauge from the audience, from some of you, what is the level of expertise as far as Flutter goes? Like, when have you heard Flutter a lot? Is this your first time learning Flutter? Have you developed Flutter before? Have you published applications? Are you dabbling into it? Are you a little bit hesitant on joining? I see a few people very basic on Flutter or not knowing Flutter to being like again, like a very prolific or very knowledgeable about Flutter. So now we see that like how we're gauging the knowledge in the audience. So I definitely appreciate everybody participating in this and being frank and honest about this. So yes. So again, Flutter hasn't been like it was actually created in 2017. Again, there's been a couple of iterations of that. Right now we're in Flutter 2, and it's pretty cool. There's been a lot of applications developed in Flutter, so it's good to know that people are jumping into this framework. The next one, for developing in general, not in Flutter only, what's your IDE or code editor of choice? I know that Rustam was mentioning about IDE. We were talking about in the chat. Of course, VS Code is the one that, like I said, stands from the pack as well, and it has been like the de facto standard for even companies in other things that are not Microsoft related. Like I know the Angular team uses like VS Code for their development. They use TypeScript as their main language. Flutter has a lot of like tools and things integrated in there. I love yeah, that's right. I myself, I confess, I even do like Nano and VI editor, even for doing Flutter, even believe it or not. So it's just, again, it's whatever your poison, you pick it and then you go with that. Whatever makes you productive, regardless, that should be your editor of choice. So don't try to be influenced by anybody. You just pick whatever makes you even happy, like whatever you think it makes you productive. So I love that. Thank you. I appreciate all the feedback. Let's do a quick small quiz. So just to see how let me just gauge your knowledge on even mobile development in general. Just kind of like a couple of trivia questions, just to get some some ice-breaking questions in there. So what do you think was the most downloaded application this year? Well, this year hasn't finished, but so far in 2021, up to date, what has been the most downloaded app up to date? Was it WhatsApp, TikTok, or Messenger? Like, which one of the three? Which one? Take a guess. This is not like oh, you win because you picked this. So which one you think was the most downloaded app? Let's take a look. It was TikTok. Yes, I know a lot of people are either have Zoom fatigue. They go to TikTok to have fun and all that. So yeah, it was one of the most downloaded apps. So, but now, as far of like, for example, like what do you think is the liquid that actually makes you going? Like, what's the thing that you gravitate towards? Coffee or tea or water or even nothing? Let's see if what's your, let's say, your fuel for coding. For me, I'm a coffee guy. I just wanted to see where people were. That's awesome. Great. Now, I wanted to ask this question. Just if you know it, it's okay if you don't know it. Which of the following well-known applications were developed in Flutter? Now we're going into Flutter territory. Which one of these, like the eBay application, the BMW application, Philips Hue, Capital One, or Groupon? You can pick more than one. So which one of the following well-known applications were developed in Flutter? A lot of people are saying eBay, BMW, Philips Hue, Capital One, or Groupon. All of them were developed in Flutter. Yes, all of them were developed in Flutter. You see how Flutter is penetrating even these great companies is because Flutter is becoming very, very popular, makes developers very productive. With one single code base, you're able to develop for all those platforms with one single code base. So it's a no-brainer to pick Flutter as your de facto mobile development framework. Actually, not even mobile. You can just do anything like I mentioned before. Okay, let's start coding. You don't want to hear me talking. I just want at least to do some interactivity, just break the ice a little bit and make sure that you guys were awake and paying attention. So now let's all go to dartpad.dev to actually do some of the coding in there. So I'm going to just get out of the presentation. I'm going to be sharing in the link. Let me just drop it in here. I'm going to be dropping the code lab that we're going to be using, and I'm going to be sharing it with everybody. So in the chat, I'm going to be dropping this code lab. Actually, let's go to step number 1, meaning just starting from there. So this is the lab that I put together for this workshop. Right now, of course, because of the time constraints, I'm only keeping it to 1 page, but I will be sharing with you the complete code lab so that you can do a full-blown application all on the web. Right now, this is a 3-page, very simple Flutter application, and this workshop is centric around mastering UI layouts. Some of you, for example, like you see a bunch of the applications that they all look the same, and you don't want your applications to look like so like off the shelf, or like so Android-y or so iOS-y. No, you want to make it very branded, branded applications aligned with your brand, using like really cool methodologies and the latest practices in UI. So you can do so in Flutter. Why? Because Flutter allows you to paint every pixel on the screen, and you can customize your applications in any way you want. So by doing this Flutter code lab, following along with me, I will be sharing some of those techniques as well. We're going to go through this Flutter code lab. At the end of the code lab, you will be able to have something that you can even take, like I said, over to like Visual Studio Code and deploy it on a physical device, like I just showed you right now. This is the same application that we're going to be doing in the code lab. This is like a sample application that I created, it's kind of like a travel application, but it focuses on like the famous bridges in the world. So please accompany me in this journey. Let's go through this workshop. I already shared the code lab, and I'm going to be showing it here as well. Oh, I see Randall is already, he's doing his thing. Okay, great. So let's start with the workshop. So the first thing that I would ask you to do is go to dartpad.dev. So dartpad.dev is this web-based IDE that you can develop in Dart, or you can also do Flutter. So it's amazing. It's not, of course, you can't compare it to Visual Studio Code, but again, for something like developing applications that you can actually take away from the web and immediately deploy it to a mobile device, this is pretty cool. So the first thing, let's go down the line. The first thing that I wanted to show you was step number 1 in this workshop. It's just showing you that we're building this 3-page Flutter application, but we're only going to be focusing on the landing page that we have right now. I will be sharing the other code labs, but just for the sake of this workshop, I just wanted to touch on that main landing page. So we're going to be talking about, again, Flutter user interfaces, how to build them with ease, common Flutter layout strategies, because a lot of people think like, oh yeah, I can just grab a bunch of the components from the library. No, you can build your own structures. You just have to learn those techniques. We're going to be creating custom widgets. A lot of people maybe even think, oh no, I can just grab it from a library. No, you can create your own Flutter widgets as well, and that's encouraged. And also how to like use Dart models to mock up your data on your application, how to pull data from the internet. Right now, we have a couple of things mocked up. So let's proceed, and then let me show you where to start. So again, no prerequisites, just using your browser, going to dartpad.dev, and then just firing up that IDE. So I'm going to go to dartpad.dev again, just for you, for all of you guys. So if you see dartpad.dev, that is the IDE. And then now, if you want to develop Flutter in dartpad.dev, here there is on the top left corner, there is a button that says New Pad. So you click where it says New Pad. You say Create New Pad. Yeah, discard the changes. Click OK. And then you pick either Dart or Flutter. So you're going to pick Flutter. You select Flutter. You click Create. And there you go. So here now, it already gives you some boilerplate code for just so that you can see that things are working. And yes, like Randall mentioned right there, that Dartpad also even has IntelliSense, which is pretty good. They've been adding a couple of features in Dartpad. You will see it. It's a little bit clunky, but again, for the fact that you can do this type of development on the web, no installation, and just jumping right away into the fun of coding, hey, you sold me on that. So let's, if you see it right there, that's just like, if you even hit run, this is how we're going to be developing the application. So we're going to be typing some code in here on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, we're going to be previewing those changes as we make progress. So let's proceed now. Now I am on step 3 of this workshop. So in the link that I provided, and yes, Dan, Flutter's using ARGB instead of RGB. Yes, so you start with yeah, exactly. It's a little weird, but it is what it is as far as like Flutter, and it's a little tricky when you create like the colors and all that like that. But it does it that way. So you see, I already went through how to launch Dartpad. You don't have to download anything. That's what's cool about it. And then now you should be ready for the initial setup of this workshop. So step number 4. If anybody can, all of you guys can direct your attention to step number 4 in the Colab. You see, we're already rocking. We're already in step number 4. So the initial setup, I'm showing you here how mentally or even physically you can just strategize how you split your design. For example, I encourage you guys to go to like Dribble or like Pinterest and look at those designs that they have in there, like those cool mobile application designs. When you look at those designs, you get intimidated. But no, all you have to do is like split it like this into like the structure, like the UI layouts. You divide it by the widgets that you're going to be tackling, and then you tackle each one individually. In this particular case, you see the design, and then I'm going to split it into those exact widgets. So I'm going to have an app bar, a header, a widget where I'm going to be providing like some scrolling capabilities, and then a bottom bar. Then each one individually, I created as a custom widget, and then I dive into it. So let's start coding. The first thing that I would ask you to do in step number 4, just to help you out and start, is to create like the kind of like the scaffolding piece. First, you need to import. For example, the first thing that I would ask you to do is clean the Dartpad environment. Like the first thing you do, clean everything, completely erase it. You don't need any of that because that's the boilerplate code. So now let's go to step number 4, where I tell you to import the material Dart library, which is the one that we're going to be using. So the material library from Flutter gives you a lot of flexibility for you to create your own widgets and to even customize your widgets. So it's not even the Cupertino library, which is only iOS centric, but this one actually gives you Android, but you could also develop very custom UIs for iOS. So let's start by importing like you can copy the chunk of code just so that I can dissect it a little bit. So the first line is for importing the Flutter material library. So the first thing that you do is importing that library. The second thing is the main method. Some of you already know main methods, like in Java, in C++, and in C Sharp, you have a main method. The main method is kind of like the most important method in your program because it bootstraps your program. It starts it all up. So the main method is the most important method in the Flutter program. Everything else happens underneath the main method. So you can just either type void main, but I helped you out, and then I provided that code for you. Next thing down the line is actually what you put inside the main method. How do you start a Flutter application? So I provided the code also there. The way that you do it is actually calling a special method called run app. Run app is a very important method in the Flutter framework, because it's now then after you execute the main method, the run app creates the application and then mounts it on the widget tree. When you're building Flutter, you have to think of like a widget tree, like widget composition of trees of components, and then you build it up like that as a tree. So then the run app, what it does is creates the material app application, which is also a widget. Keep in mind, everything in Flutter is a widget. So the run app, what it does is it creates the material app, because you can create either a Cupertino app, material app. This is for the material app because we're consuming the material design. And then you run it inside the run app method. The run app method mounts the main widget as the root widget. And then from there, you start building your structure. It has a property called home. The home means the first page that it will be displayed for this application. In our case, we're going to be calling it landing page, but you could call it anything. And then this flag right here is called debug show check mode banner. All it does is like it disables the little sash that it shows when you're debugging. So you want to mark it as false because you don't want to do that. So we already did it. Is the main method, the run app method. The run app method launches the material app, which is also a widget. The application itself is a widget. And then that widget loads the first page that we're going to be creating called landing page. You could call it anything, but that will be like the starting page. And then you see, scroll down, we're all good. Let's proceed to the next step. So far, so good. Don't worry about the issue that you're seeing on line number 6, because we haven't created that page yet. That's what we're going to do now in a minute. So now let's go to step number 5, where we're going to be creating the landing page widget. So when you create a widget, you can think of a widget as a button, a label, a list, an image, but a widget, you can create your own widgets as well by doing widget composition. You build it with using core components. In this particular case, when you create a custom widget, the way that you do it, everybody can direct your attention to step number 5. Step number 5, you create a special class. So you create a class. I'm going to call it landing page. You can see the code in there. And then you have to extend stateless widget. Stateless widget is one of those, the 2 special classes in Flutter that you can create custom widgets for. You can create a stateless widgets or stateful widgets. Stateless widgets, they just render, the framework renders it, and then that's it. And then stateful widget, the framework also renders it, but it maintains state. So every time it rebuilds, you can change the state on it, and then the rebuild process of Flutter just updates your UI accordingly based on the current state of the application. So it's based on state. So it's stateful or stateless. This particular case, we don't care about any state in this particular scenario, so we'll continue. Every custom widget has a build method, so you have to override it. So you can just say override, and you have to decorate the method override the special method that returns the main widget. So your custom widget returns a widget out of a method called build. So you have to say widget build, and then you pass it a build context. If those of you are following along, you can see that you pass a context into the build method. And then the build context is actually a special object that gets injected by the framework, so that you can actually know where your widget is rendered in the widget tree. You can even navigate and traverse the widget tree, go all the way up to the parent, inherit components like, let's say, state management libraries, navigation, a lot of capabilities, theming, and all that. So you get it out of the context. So every widget gets the context. of the parent that rendered it above, and so on. So again, we're building a hierarchy. Out of the build method, when you're creating your custom widget, you have to return another widget. In this particular case, I'm going to be returning a scaffold widget. A scaffold widget is a very versatile widget that gives you like an app bar, bottom bar, a drawer. You're going to see it in a minute. It's pretty cool. And then scaffold has a special property called body. And then in the body is just like the main thing that you're going to see on the screen. In this particular case, we're just going to show like a text label or like a text widget. So in this text widget, I'm just going to write landing page, something like that. So far, so good. Does anybody have any questions or anything? You can drop it in the chat. I can direct my attention there, but at least I wanted to explain every step of what I'm doing. So after you create the scaffold and you create the build method that returns a scaffold widget, you can hit the run button in here in Dartpad. And I just wanted to show you that immediately as you start typing and creating, you start seeing things on the screen. That's the process that we're going to be doing as we move along. So right now we have the landing page. It's very basic right now, but now we're going to keep elaborating on this page by continually looking at the design and following along in the tutorial. So I love that a lot of people already went ahead. That's awesome. So the next thing in we're in step number 5 now, and we're actually looking at the landing page. So another thing that you also like to bring into your Flutter applications is like either constants or values that you want to use throughout your application. In step number 5, I'm providing you with a bunch of like our color palette, like the colors that we're going to be using in Flutter. And like Dan, what you mentioned, yes, you can use like ARGB. It's actually use ARGB because at the beginning you have to say what the opacity of the color is. So that's why it does like the alpha channel before. So I'm going to copy all those just to avoid you some typing. And you can create them and add them right under the import of your code right there. So I just drop them in there. Now these colors that I've defined in there, I'm going to be using them throughout the workshop. So that's how you can create it. You can also create like a static class or create like a utilities class, and you can add these colors in there. That's how I normally do it, and then I import it everywhere in my application. So this is just another way to do it. So let's continue proceeding. So we already have the scaffold in the landing page. We're just showing a text widget. Now let's replace that text widget by a container. A container is another widget in Flutter that is very versatile because it allows you to, it combines positioning, painting, and even in sizing. So it does a lot of those things. It's very versatile because it combines all those things. So container, we're going to be using it quite a bit, but just stay tuned because there are things about the container that I'm going to be questioning on you later. So take a look at that. So we replaced already the text label with a container. And if you see the design, what we're going to do is this container is going to occupy the whole screen. In the design, we have like some sort of gradient. So the container will be like that container that will hold that as the scaffold, kind of like the Flutter version of the DOM. The scaffold, you can say yes, that could be probably like the body of the DOM. Like it's pretty much like it just gives you like a convenience component for you to start up. So it's not quite like the DOM, but I know that you're going to be I'm going to be throwing a couple of like HTML references, and you're going to love them. So stay tuned for those. But the scaffold, what it just gives you, and I'm going to show you in a minute, is the ability for you to plug in, to start from a good starting point, because it gives you placeholders for the main components in an application, like an app bar, a bottom bar, a drawer, a main screen. So it's kind of like a component, a widget that is a great starting point for your application. So every time you start like a page, start with a scaffold, because you pretty much will always have like an app bar or a bottom bar or a drawer. I'll show you that in a minute. So the scaffold, you have, we're going to add a container. Container then, like I mentioned, is involved in sizing. Yes, exactly. So it's very influenced by material design. So the container, we're going to be adding like a gradient in there. So in the container has a property called decoration. Decoration, I'm going to be using it a lot. Decoration is a special property that you can use for doing like background images, you can do gradients, you can do colors, like this particular case. So we're going to be adding, if you direct your attention to step 5, I'm going to be adding that decoration. So you're going to type box decoration, and then box decoration is a special object that has other properties in it. It has a special property called gradient. The gradient property in the box decoration, yes, exactly. Scaffold you could do for Cupertino, but scaffold for material is like you can use it in even on iOS based applications. So that's why I love like the scaffold for even those for all of those. This is a great starting point. So the gradient takes you can either do like a radial gradient or a linear gradient. You have a bunch of those type of components in Flutter. So I'm gonna add to the gradient a linear gradient. And then linear gradient takes, as you might expect, you have to provide it some color. So let's start with there are primary gray at the top, and then end, or let's say a vertical gradient starting from primary gray to secondary gray. So the same thing, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna pass an array of colors. So you can pass even more than one color. You can, and then you can have like a range, right? So in this case, I'm just gonna pass 2 colors. So we're gonna pass the primary gray color and the secondary gray color. And then you will see how now that gradient will show. Now you also have to tell it where the gradient starts, because you could do it diagonally, or you could do it starts at the bottom and then goes to the top, or starts at the top and then goes to the bottom. So here you provide a begin property, and then you have to say alignment dot, and then you see, remember we were mentioning this, the IntelliSense. So you can say where you want it to begin. In this case, I want to say top center. So top center, that's where it's going to start, right? And then end, that's another property. And then you say where is going, the gradient is going to end. You do alignment dot bottom center. So I want to start at the top center and at the bottom center. If you hit run, we should be able to see the gradient already showing in our application. So it's not very noticeable right now, but you see there's gray. It starts with the primary gray, ends with the secondary gray. That's in Flutter how you do like a gradient. You apply it on a container. The container then is the main container in your application. You use it as the background for the whole thing. Great. Continuing down the line, you see that that's where you should be on step number 5. So let's proceed to step number 6 in the code lab. And then now we're going to be starting setting up other things. So Dan, back to your question about the scaffold. So the scaffold, again, like I said, it provides some of those other constructs to allow you to have a very good starting point. So we already said what the body was. Now scaffold has an app bar and it has a drawer. So you can immediately just spin one up and you do app bar, and then you just instantiate with an app bar widget. So you just type app bar. And if you do run, you will see without me doing anything, I already have an app bar. So that's why I say that, again, the scaffold widget, see, you already have an app bar. And I didn't even code much. So that's why that's the beauty of the scaffold, how you can leverage for like immediately be very productive and increase your productivity. Another thing, like I mentioned, was like the drawer. So you can have a drawer. The drawer is that like side menu that you like almost all applications have now. And again, like Randall said, like, okay, you can use it, like it's very inspired by the material design. So this is kind of like very material designy, you could say. So now if I just type drawer is just another widget. App bar is a widget, drawer is another widget. And I just populate the drawer in the app bar. I have right now half application built. Look, I just click and I didn't even have to do anything. So it already, that's why scaffold is so good, because it already gives you a starting point. Now I have an app bar, I have a drawer. Yeah, exactly, like magic. So you have a drawer, and then that's it. Then I can continue from there. I can add a bottom bar, I can do all those things, and then you can move forward like that. So you see, now I can continue moving forward. Now I can say, I don't like, for example, you see a lot of people, and this is one of the things that I always recommend people, do not settle for what you get out of the library. Do not just ship an application like this. You want to be able to customize your applications, because Flutter gives you that capability. When Flutter, you own every pixel on the screen. You want to take advantage of that possibility. I don't like my applications to look like the yeah, exactly, yeah. So I don't want my application to look like the next guy's. I want to customize my application, Flutter gives you that capability. So without further ado, let's continue. So now let's customize this bar. In step number 6, I'm showing you how to customize it. So you don't have to go with that color. You can change the color on the app bar. So, and also like the way that it shows. So I'm gonna add 3 properties to the app bar that truly make a difference right away. The app bar has an elevation. Elevation is like how it kind of like gives that elevated effect, like adds shadow to it. So I don't want to add shadow. I want to make it very, materially like, or kind of like Web 2.0, like not too many shadows, very like material, kind of like modern design. So you just do 0. 0 means no shadows on the app bar. The next thing is the background color. So don't go with just the default blue that you get. So you do like background color, and then you pass your color. That's why I added those colors above. And then you add whatever color you want. In my case, I'm adding the primary gray. And then if you run it, if you see now, you start seeing some of the changes already coming in place. You see, you're already seeing the change happening. And then I can change the icon theme. You see that icon right there, the hamburger menu? You can change that. You can even change the icon. In this case, I'm going to change the color of that icon because I wanted to follow my application's theme. So now I'm going to go to icon theme. That's a property in the app bar. And then you have to instantiate it. You're passing an object of icon theme data. So I do icon theme data, and then you pass it a color. So I do color, and I'm going to use one of the colors that I have called main yellow. Main yellow, like that. Always, every time you do like a little bit of change, you can hit run, and then you see where you are. So you see, and then we make progress. There you go. And then my header, my app bar is different from anybody else's now. And now it's more in line with my brand. So that's exactly what I want to do. Another thing is that people constantly do is like, also in the app bar, they just add a title. That's another property that you can populate. And the title is usually a text, for example. And then, for example, they do like a text like this. Let me just show you real quick. For example, you could do style, text style, and then do color, colors.white, for example. Something like this. And then if you hit run, your header bar has a title. Okay, but this is just like any other application. Why do you have to settle for it? In this case, you can even make it much more stylish, and you can add an icon to it. Remember, everything is a widget in Flutter. You can add anything to it. Instead of a text, I'm gonna be adding in step number 6, as you see, I'm gonna be adding a widget, an icon widget. In this particular case, I'm gonna be wrapping it inside a center widget. Flutter also has widgets that provide like positioning. In this case, this one is a center widget. So you do center, again, another widget. And then center is one of those widgets that allow a single child. Some widgets take more than one child. Some only just take one. Center is one of them. So you just do child icon, and then I'm going to type one of my icons. Let's say I'm going to go with the one that I'm using, like airplane mode, because I want like that little airplane in there. So you do airplane mode _on. Another thing, you see that I'm using the icons and they immediately like showing on the application. So that is another thing that I wanted to share with you. Flutter already has by default, all the material icons available to you. So the material icons from Google are available to you for free out of the box with Flutter, and you can use them because they're vector graphics, and you can make your applications, very robust and very good looking. So you can try. They don't have colored icons, but you can color those icons as well with code, of course. So in this case now, if I do main yellow, now you will see that instead of a title that says hello, now I will have like a little bit of like an icon in there. So I can make anything. I can even create my own widget and load it there. Remember, everything in Flutter is a widget. That's why you can swap things, and you can have that mentality of customization in Flutter. So you see, now we have that cool icon. Awesome. Let's continue. You see, I'm making a lot of customizations to this app bar. Then if you proceed down the line, there is another property of app bars called actions, which also are very common. On the right-hand side of the app bar, you're able to add like actions or buttons. So there's a property called actions, which takes an array of widgets. You can add it one widget, you can add more, you can add like a menu or something like that. Right now I'm just gonna add one single widget, just to prove the point that you can add anything in there. It's so versatile that it gives you that flexibility. So in this case, we're adding a container widget. Remember, containers are not just used for, like I said, for a background. You can use them for positioning as well, because they have margin and padding capabilities. So I'm using the container here for margin capabilities. So I'm gonna add a margin, and the way you add margins using a container. Now, Dan, back to you on the DOM thing. So a container is kind of like a div. So think of a container as a div. You can use it for anything. You can add colors. You can wrap things around it. You can group things. So a container is kind of like that type of div in that DOM, HTML analogy. So you can add like the margin, like edge insets dot only, and then only you have other options like all, meaning you can do like one single value, like padding or margin all around. In this case, if you say only, you only provide the coordinate of that you want to affect. In this case, the right. So I only want to add 10 pixels of padding on the right hand side, and then my container, whichever I put inside, then we'll have that padding, that margin. So what am I going to add inside that container? An icon button. So you can add anything to this container. So an icon button is another type of widget. So I'm going to type icon button. And if you see, icon button takes a couple of properties. So it takes an icon, and then an icon is just kind of like the icon that we used above. And you can just do icon and pass, like, we're going to be using one of those material icons already available to us. And you already have some IntelliSense, so you can do like notifications. Again, you can even play around as we're moving along. You can even change things in the code. You can do anything you want. Notifications. I'm going to be trying that one on outline. I want to use specifically that one, the one that has like that outline. And then you can provide a color to it. So you can do colors.gray, for example, in this case. So I'm going to make it gray, and we're going to be adding an icon button. When you see that little squiggly, because there's something missing on this widget, and it says that the onPressed event is missing. So this is because this is an icon button. You have to handle the onPressed event, and I'm going to add just an empty callback, right? If I hit run, remember, every time we make a little bit of a change, we go and verify it, and now you see it, how I was able to add a very customized, before your eyes, right in front of your eyes, I was able to customize this bar, highly created a bunch of like very custom pieces in it. And I'm just wanted to inspire you to make your own customizations as well when you're building your applications. Don't settle for just like the regular stuff. Perfect. So let's continue down the line. Now we're down to step 7. So let's go now and play with the drawer. So the drawer, every time you add the drawer, you get this blank, slab of thing, right? This is also another widget. A drawer is a regular widget, so you can add other widgets inside as well, and you can customize it very highly. So let me show you. In creating the drawer, we're now at step number 7 in the code lab. You see what we're going to be building. So we're going to just be adding another container inside of this drawer. The drawer is just going to grab this widget and he's going to render it inside of it. As simple as that. So let's go to that section. Let's go to the drawer. And then in the drawer, because a drawer is another one of those widgets that take one single child, you say child, and you add a container. A container, like you've seen before, you can add a color. And then I'm going to use the same main yellow. I'm sticking with my theme. A lot of people just leave it like that, white. Much power to you. But I like to make my applications very unique. So you change the color of the container. Let's now change the alignment on how, when you add a child, let's say to this container, where this item will be aligned. So you pass an alignment to that. So you do alignment, and then there are a couple of options. So you do alignment, bottom left. You see that you get a little bit of IntelliSense. So I want anything that I add to this container to align to the bottom and to the left. And then I'm going to add some padding all around it, 20 pixels. So I'm going to do padding. Then you do edge insets. That's how you do the padding and margin. And then you do all. All is that option that gives you, like, okay, you can do all around it. Just by saving here and running it, now you will see that immediately when I just hit that, I already get my color. Perfect. Now, let's add something to this a container so that you see now that when immediately you add something to this container, a child to this container, it will be aligned to the bottom left. So let's add a child to this container. We're going to add an icon widget, another widget. You just do it like that. And let's use that same, I can even use that same icon that I'm using up here, which is the airplane one. So I'll do icons, dot airplane mode on. I'm going to now change the size because you can change the size of those icons. And the good thing about those icons is that they're vector graphics. So as you can scale them as much as you can. They won't change on resolution and they will stay sharp. So you can just change the size to 80. And then I'm going to make it black. So you do color, that's another property, and then you do colors.black. Now, you don't even have to save, it just saves automatically in Dartpad. If you hit run, now you will see that when I expand it, you will see that little widget being aligned to the bottom left. So you see, very simple. I was able to make even something pretty slick, very minimalist, but the great thing is that it's different from any other application, and then you make your application very unique. So those are the things that you should leverage from Flutter. You own every pixel. Take advantage of that. Okay, great. So let's continue with the next step. We're on step 8 now, down to step 8. Now we're going to be creating another widget. So now we're going into more custom widgets. Right now we've been able to use like the core widgets, containers, icons of the scaffold, app bar, drawer. Now let's create more custom widgets. So remember when we looked at the design, we split it up into custom widgets. So that's exactly the way to go about it. So now I'm going to be creating a widget that will represent the whole header. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing in step number 8. So in step number 8, let's create that header widget. So now let's go to our landing page. So let's go right here. And then inside of, and again, one bummer here is that you can't, in Dartpad, you can't collapse it. That's maybe something that we should be able to submit to them so that it allows you to collapse it. It always opens it up like that. It doesn't allow you to collapse it. Yeah. So then let's, so here, for example, like in the main container, we haven't added any child to this container. So the first thing that we're going to be adding to the main container, like the gray container in the body of the scaffold, is a child. So now what I'm going to be doing right under the decoration here in this container, remember we're here now in the landing page, in the container of the landing page. Under the decoration, I'm going to be doing a child. A container only takes one child. So we're going to add a column. A column is another widget that is very versatile because it allows you to add more than one item or more than one widget in it. That's why it has the property called children. So whenever you add children to the column, it will lay them out vertically. Now I want to specify in the column how they want to be aligned. In this case, I want them to stretch with the window so that it sticks to the sides, and then it allows for a little bit of responsiveness. So you want to implement a little bit of responsive design in here. So now let's do a cross-axis alignment, and then you do cross-axis alignment dot stretch. Let me type it correctly. Sorry. I'll do cross-axis alignment dot stretch. There we go. So now every item that we add will stretch. Inside of this children, now is where we're going to be adding all the items inside of the body of this scaffold. So get ready to add a couple of things in here. And then the first thing that we're going to be adding, it will be a widget. We're making it up right now, but we're just typing it before we even create it. But we're going to be calling it header widget. Again, feel free to name it anything you want, but in my case, I always like to have them called, to what they represent, and always keep them very encapsulated. So in this case, everything that represents the header will be within this header widget, just like that. Perfect. So now, how do? You have that little red line in there. That means we haven't created it. So if you see now, we create the header class. I've already provided the code for you. But that's exactly how you create a custom widget. Just the same way that we created the main page, the widgets inside also follow that same procedure. So you have to have a class. We're going to be calling it header widget. You see the code. I've already provided the code. You can just copy paste it so that you can just hear me talk, and then, but at least you have it there. And then you always make it extend either stateful or stateless widget. So I'm going to make it stateless widget. You always override a method that returns a widget. And then you do build context, just like that. And then we're going to just return something simple so that we can see it on the screen, just to see that the widget is actually getting injected into the widget tree and it's being added to the column. So I'm going to do a return text, and I'm just going to do like some bogus text. I'm going to type whatever is there. So I'm just going to say header. We're going to be returning a text widget out of that. I'm going to be adding some color to it. The way that you add a color to a text widget is by doing style, text style, and then you provide a color. It's kind of like doing CSS inline. So you do color, colors.white. Remember, because in Flutter, when you're building your widgets, you're actually building the configuration, because widget has the 3 trees that it uses. Remember the widget tree, the element tree, and then the render tree. The widget tree is just the configuration. You're feeding the state of what your application would be at a given point to the framework, and then the framework does it. That's why it does this declarative approach. It's very declarative. So let me now run it, and we should be able to see the text header somewhere up here. And that's where now I know that my placeholder is, there it is. So you see that little text that says header, that means things are good. Now let's continue down the line, further developing this, this widget. So what do we want to do in this widget? So we want to add that same structure. If you see one of the schematics that I created, like you see how I divided it. So we want to split that into, we want to make a column inside of that widget, and then lay the items out as a column, and then add them like that. So let me show you. So instead of having, now that we know that things are good, let's replace that text widget by a column widget. You see, I'm using all these common, very basic, bare bones core widgets, but they're very powerful because they allow you to create all these complex structures, and then you can take it, you can build very complex structures and widget compositions like that. So it's pretty cool. So let's create a column, and then the column, just like above, I'm going to add a cross-axis alignment. Cross-axis alignment, remember, is opposite to what the main axis, to what its main axis is. So if it's a column, cross-axis alignment is the horizontal alignment. So I'm going to do cross-axis alignment, and then I'm going to say align my items start, meaning to the left. So I do cross-axis alignment dot start, meaning align the items in this column to the left, and then add the children property to it. I've already shown you the code in there, and now I'm already showing you one of the labels that we're going to add, so you can just copy paste it so you can see what it does, and then I'm going to dissect that code. So you see, I'm not that bad. I'm actually helping you out a little bit. I'm making you code, but also you in order to learn Flutter, you actually gotta get your hands dirty in Flutter and type it all out. So here, what we have as the first children of this column is a padding widget. Remember, you have the container widget, but there you have specialized widgets like padding, center, align, that do those kind of things. And then I'm providing padding only top, left, and right. You can specify that. And then inside of that, another column, because I wanted to keep it like very grouped. And then inside of that column, I added 2 text widgets. A widget that just says like, where do you, and then the other one says like, want to go. So I split it into 2. You could actually create like one single widget. If you want to mix like a couple of colors in your text, you could use a rich text widget. This one, I just want to keep it simple. You can do like two separate widgets and lay it out as a column. So now if I just save this and see where we are. So there you go. Now you have now those 2 labels. So we're moving ahead. And then now we see those two lines, those two labels being shown, the top and the bottom. So now we have those two labels. Let's proceed. What would be the next thing that we want to add? So we want to add now that fake search bar that I created. So that some people, they just add like a text field in there, and they don't add any like, you know, pizzazz and any stylings to it. I like to create like maybe rounded corners, maybe make it transparent. Again, blend it with my design and make it very unique. So in this case, we're gonna fake like a search bar. And again, you don't have to bring like another library component. You can create your own one by using the core widgets like containers, rows, and all that. Let me show you how to do that. So right here, we're going to be adding another padding widget right below it because I want to add padding around that. So right under the first padding, I'm just going to do padding, right? And then inside of that, we're going to do padding only left and right. So I'm going to be typing padding, edge insets at only. Remember, only is the one used for only when you want to do specific coordinates. So I'm going to just do the left 30 pixels and right 30 pixels. So there, now you will see some padding. Now we need to add a child of this padding. I've already provided the code, and if you see the design, what we want to add is that some sort of this search bar, like that, this like pill style of effect. So I'm gonna be dropping this container. I've already provided the code for that. So you add it as a child of the padding. So you do child, and then when you paste it, also here, just another tip: when you copy paste from anywhere into Dartpad, you have to do like Shift Tab to kind of fix the formatting, because it kind of messes it up on you. If you want to format it nicely. So if you want to keep it like that, that's okay. But if you do Shift Tab, it does that tabbing for you. So let me dissect this code again. So you've already known the container. You know that I need a container. I can add some padding. And then I'm using the decoration property for adding a border radius. This is what actually gives it that border look around that the field. And then I just give it a light gray color to the background of that. And then I just added some margin. So if I hit run, you should be able to see that, that little pill looking container in there. Now we want to add stuff in there. So what do? The padding has a child. The child is the one that has the container. So then if we want to add anything to that, it will have to be inside of that container. So that you see is the widget composition, is that hierarchy that you're building. So you have to nest these things like that. So now inside of that container, outside of this margin, I'm going to add a child. Actually, not even outside of the margin, that's correct. I'm going to add a child to this container. If you want to lay things out like horizontally, then you use a row widget. I've already shown like the column. Now we're looking at the row, and you see the row is just like the column, but it will lay things out horizontally. So here you see that I'm adding a row, and a row is also another one of those widgets that have that take more than one widget. So you have to provide the children property like an array, because you want to lay them out horizontally. So now we add three things. We're going to be adding that little icon that looks like the little search bar. So all you have to do is just add an icon widget. So you do icon, then leverage the material icons. You do icons dot search, and add a color to that. Let's add a color, and you do colors dot gray. I want to make it gray. Perfect. Now, if you want to do like spacing, then you could have then wrap this icon into a container and then add margin, or do the padding, wrap it inside of padding, and then you add padding to the icon. I like to do like a little hack. There is a special widget in Flutter called size box, which actually doesn't render anything. Well, it renders like an invisible box, and then that's what I use sometimes, like for doing spacing. If I'm too lazy to do like padding, you could just do like I provided right here, a sized box with a width of 10 pixels. Now that will give a 10 pixel space in between the icon and whatever I want to put right next to that. In this particular case, I just want to add a label that says text. So I'm going to, that says search. So I'm going to be using a text widget that says search. And then I'm going to add like a gray color to it as well. So I do style, text style, and then you add the color to the text style, and then you do colors.gray. So you see now we added an icon, a little space, and the text. So if you run it, now we should be able to see that. You see now things are taking shape. And if you see some design like that, you'll see, oh yeah, where did you get that package? No package. I created it all myself. You can even build your own like Flutter libraries if you want to, like Flutter UI packages. You could do so. So and there's a bunch of those that if you want to leverage, like really, if you're in a crunch, yes, I would encourage you to use like those libraries. But if you want to learn Flutter, you got to go through these motions, and that gives you that experience by building stuff like this. And you see, very simple. We just created that. Awesome. I love the way that things are taking shape. Now let's proceed to the next widget. So you see, we're building these widgets, like chunks of code where we are encapsulating that functionality inside of them. And each widget has its own build method, which I'm going to be explaining down the line. Why is it that you need to do that? So let's continue now. And then now we have let's do the attraction list view. That one will be like a scrollable list view that will contain that, like all those little, the pictures in there that you see. So let's create something called attraction list view right under here, under the header widget. So I'm going to be typing it, and I'm going to be typing something called attraction list view. This will be another widget. It doesn't exist yet. So we're going to be creating another widget. And yes, I definitely love like all the features, and I hope that Dartpad continues growing, because there's a bunch of like web-based IDEs that you could do a lot of advanced things. So if Dartpad, you could even do like really cool things from there. I would definitely support that. So okay, so I provided already the code for that, so that avoid any further typing, because again, I know. This is a workshop. We want to, get our hands dirty, but also you get into the tedious typing of the same thing. So I already provided the class that extends stateless widget that is called attraction list view. This is where now we're going to encapsulate the functionality of the list view with some of the cards in there. So let's continue. And then you see now what we want to do before we even do this is add some models. So in Dart, you can create like classes that just hold data, and they call them PODOs, like plain old Dart objects. You could do that. And then in this particular case, I'm creating a model that will hold information about, let's say, the attraction name, the attraction image, location, and description. So those things, I like to create them as PODOs, or plain old Dart objects. So going down the line on step number 9, oh, well, that's true. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it all depends, because again, that is so true. That is a very good point, Dan. And it all depends. But again, whatever makes the developers again productive, I know they're going to gravitate towards that. So let's continue down the line. I'm going to be copying this class. So again, you can create your classes very simple because you're using Dart. So you can just create like this class called attraction model. I'm going to be holding all the values inside of that class. So I encourage you to create it like that as well. If you go down the line, now you see that I'm providing you with a bunch of a boilerplate, hard-coded information that I want you to bring over to the code, because it's going to facilitate things much quicker. Here, I'm just simulating the data coming, let's say, from a RESTful API. So in step number 9, if you scroll down, there is a list of the attractions. It's called attractions. It's a final collection. It's a list of attraction models. You can just copy all that and then bring it over to the code. You scroll all the way up, and then you can just put it right here along with the rest of the global variables. So this is nothing more than a collection. It's a list of attraction models where I populated all that data for you. Now we're going to be consuming it. We're going to be consuming it inside of the application. So let's simulate that we're making an HTTP call to a RESTful API of some sort. Okay. Now let's go back down to the attraction list view. Let's concentrate only on that widget. Okay. Great. So the first thing that I will ask you to do is actually replace that sample thing. Actually, if you even save it and just hit run, let's see if he's under an NDA. So let's see if things are plugged in. There you go. So the attraction list view, because we pasted this thing and we have this sample text widget, we're just seeing that attraction list view right there. So now we know that the attraction list view is going to be showing in there. But let's replace that, because that was just a placeholder. Let's replace that by another widget. In this case, we're going to be using the expanded widget. The expanded widget, for those of you familiar with HTML, JavaScript, CSS3, if you're familiar with the Flexbox model in CSS, the expanded is kind of like equates a container that you can apply a CSS of flex of 1, so that it actually occupies most of the real estate in its parent. And then whenever you add more items, the parent container will just add it based on their widths, but it will continue allocating more space to that expanded widget. So when you have an expanded widget, that means it's kind of like a widget with flex 1. That way, this widget, what I'm trying to do is make it so that it takes most of the space in the parent container. In this case, the column that is holding onto the body of the page. So that's why I have an expanded widget. Continuing down the line, we're going to add a child to this expanded widget. Remember, we're going to be adding a list. So one of those widgets in Flutter that allows for like scrolling and the list view capabilities is exactly called like that, called list view. I already provided the code. So for the expanded widget, you add that list view as a child of the expanded widget. So we're in step 9, halfway through step 9, find the place where I'm mentioning the list view. So if you copy paste that code, let me just dissect it a little bit so I can show you. So the expanded widget is going to take most of the real estate in the scaffold. Then I add the list view as the child of that, so that now that child occupies all that space. The list view is that widget that allows you for scrolling. It gives you scrolling, and then you add a bunch of widgets in there, and then it provides the scrolling capabilities. It has a specific constructor called builder that you can pass a bunch of parameters to it. For example, padding. Let's say you can add some padding inside of your scrollable items. Item count, you have to tell it how many items there are. Like Randall has mentioned in the past also, list view it has like a bunch of other constructors. You can actually even add like a fixed amount of items. But list view builder is very special because it does virtualization of the rows. So it does virtualized rows, meaning when you're scrolling, as you scroll, the items get rendered in real time, making it very efficient when you have like really long lists. So list view builder is your friend when you have a lot of items in the list. I use it by default because I tend to then add more items later on. But list view builder does like virtualized rows, so it's very efficient for that. Scroll direction, you can set the direction. By default is vertical, but I'm saying I want to make it horizontal. And then the item builder is this special method in the list view builder, in the list view, that in any iteration of every item in the list is gonna execute and render a widget for you. So this is where now when you feed a list of items to the list view, it's gonna render one widget per item, and I wanna create that inside of this callback. So now let's further elaborate on what each item will look like. So what we're going to be creating is a special a widget that will be rendered for each one of the items in the list view, which we're going to be calling it attraction card. The first thing that I'm going to do inside of this callback, inside of the list view builder, is extract the item in the iteration. Let's say if you have a list of 20, the list view builder provides you the index of each of the items as it is generating it. So that's why it's providing the index in here. So here, we're going to be leveraging the collection that we had above. So we're going to be extracting an attraction model out of it. So I'm going to be doing, exactly. So I'm going to be doing an attraction model, and I'm going to call it current attraction. So I'm going to be holding on to that value in this property here. So current attraction. And then I'm going to just do attractions. I'm using that collection that I pasted above, and then I'm going to fetch one out of the index. What this does is, like, in every iteration as you scrolling, is generating them dynamically for you as you scroll. So let's say if you have 20, whatever's in the viewport, it will render it for you. As you scroll, it starts rendering. Now that I have that, we're going to be creating now outside of this structure, we're going to be creating what each one of these cards look like. So remember, we're going to be focusing on what each one of these cards look like. So that Even that itself, you can make it into a separate widget. That's what's cool about Flutter, that it gives you that widget composition. So we're gonna focus only on this widget right now. Now let's also create another custom widget. Like I said, we're gonna be calling it attraction card. I think that's what I'm calling it. So I even provided the code for you right there. Again, same ritual, same routine. You either create a custom widget that extends stateless or stateful, either or. That's why I don't want to waste your time, typing the same thing here. I'm providing you with the boilerplate code for that. Randall and I go about like those type of like those snippets in Flutter in VS Code that give you this by just typing a few letters. So here in Dartpad, it doesn't do it, but it would be cool to actually have it. But in VS Code, you just type a few letters and then you get like this boilerplate code, which makes you very productive. So here I'm giving it to you so you could copy paste it, but eventually every time you create a widget, this is the boilerplate code. So now let's start creating things inside of this attraction card. Remember, the card is only the single item that represents each one of the items in the list view. So first things first, let's add a couple of properties and a constructor, because we want to feed something into this constructor. So I'm going to be doing an attraction model property, and I'm using null safety. That's why I'm using the little question mark. And then I'm going to be calling it attraction model. Also, let's create a constructor for this widget so that we can feed it via the constructor. So I'm going to be making a special constructor for this. So I'm going to be calling it attraction card and pass this same property as feed it via the constructor. So I'm going to be injecting it into the constructor just like this. So you see now we have an attraction card that in every iteration of the list view, we're going to be feeding each one of the models of the list and injecting in each one of the cards. Proceeding down the line, I'm explaining here how is it that we're going to break it up and how is it and why the reason I created it like that. So I'm going to be creating a stack. That's another type of widget. And then I'm going to be adding the items layered. So I'm going to be adding the image, then a gradient, then a label, like a column with labels. So a stack is a very useful widget for when you want to lay things like add things like in a layer. Like that. Okay, so let's proceed down the line. So the first thing that we're going to be doing in this widget is just add like some properties to this default container. So let's add a fixed width. Let's try like 180 pixels. I tried that, and then let's add some margin. So we're going to be adding some margin to that. So I'm going to be adding edge insets dot all. And then I'm just going to say 10 pixels margin all around this container. So that's to separate each one from each other. And we're going to be using a special widget as a child of this container called a stack. We hadn't seen it before, but now we are. I add a stack as the child of this container. And the stack is a widget that allows you to add other widgets in a layered fashion. So the stack also has a children property. And then we're going to be adding some of those things in there. So the first thing that we're going to be adding, a stack works like from the bottom up. Whatever you add at the top is actually the bottommost item. And as you add items, they come to the forefront, right? So then if you see the design, the first thing that shows is the image. Then inside, on top of the image, I'm going to be adding the gradient and the stuff. So the bottommost item is actually the image. So let's do that. I'm providing already a container that has that. So let's add that as the first child of the stack. So by copying, pasting that, let me dissect the code again. So I'm using a container as the background image. So the container has this special property called decoration. And then the decoration, you have to add the box decoration, which in turn has this image property called, and then you have to feed a decoration image, which in turn also has an image, and then you pass a network image. Remember, I'm passing a network image. Why? Because the model that I'm injecting has the path to an image hosted somewhere. And then I'm using the fit strategy to make it so that when it stretches, it doesn't affect the aspect ratio and it doesn't look like stretched. or anything. So it maintains the aspect ratio, and then it fills the container pretty much. So that's why I have a container with the background image. Let's proceed down the line. We're going to be adding now the gradient. So first we added the image, right? Now we're going to be adding the gradient. So the gradient is again yet another container. So again, you see how what I told you, that container is very versatile. So now let me copy that code and paste it here. And I'm going to show you again how to do the gradient. So the gradient, the same way that we did it in the main application, like here, remember the gray gradient? I'm adding a container with a box decoration, with the gradient property, and adding a linear gradient. But this time, I'm going to start from a transparent color to a very opaque black so that you can see a little bit through. And then I wanted to start the same thing, top center, and then end at the bottom center. So you add a container with a gradient right on top of the image. So you have one image as a container with a background image. Then you add a container with the gradient like that. Now, the last thing is then the information that is going to be displayed on top now of the gradient. So you add the image, then the gradient, then the content. So the content is a very simple structure that I created, which is a column. And of course, I provided it again for you to copy paste because again, you already know how to do a column. Remember a column, we'll just lay them out vertically. And I'm providing two properties. So I'm saying in the cross-axis alignment, meaning the vertical alignment, make them to the left. So anything you add to this column, align it to the left, horizontally, I'm sorry. And then the main axis in the column, which is vertically, align it at the bottom. So anything in this column will be aligned bottom left inside of that column. And then all I add inside the column is a couple of text widgets with some spacing inside. Notice that in this widget, I'm consuming the attraction model that I'm injecting. That is, again, a good practice. You feed your models, whether, again, some people might use like in this particular case, I'm just injecting it via the constructor, but the best way to do it is using like a very decoupled state management solution like RiverPod, MobX, whatever have you. So you could do that, but in this case, I'm just feeding it through the constructor. So far, I should be good by creating this widget like this. Now let's go back and use this widget back into the list view. So let's go back to the attraction list view widget and let's replace that placeholder container that I had before. And now let's make use of that new attraction card widget that I created. So I'm going to be typing attraction card. And remember, I created a constructor that takes in an attraction model. So you just type it exactly like that, attraction model. And then you feed this object that I'm pulling out of the attractions collection, then you feed it into the constructor like that. So far, so good. Awesome. So as you see, very simple, I was able to decompose this widget into multiple widgets. One widget that holds the scrolling capability, and then another one that handles just the single item. Try not to make your build methods like too large. After I save and run, we should be able to see this. Now you see things coming along, right? I love the fact that I'm able to see things now on the screen. And then you see now that each one of those items is actually taking shape, right? But the only thing that we're missing here, of course, you can notice it right away. I know that you may have already, that each one of these widgets is missing like the rounded corners. So how do you do that? You say, okay, so how do you do that? Right down the line, I'm showing you how actually to do that. Let's say whenever you have a stack widget and you want to clip things inside of that widget, you use one specialized widget for clipping, like removing corners or like clipping like a circle out of it or something like that. It's called the clip R rect. There's a clip oval for cutting like a circle, and this one actually does like the rounded corners. So my suggestion to you would be wrap the stack inside of a clip rect. I'm showing you the instructions in there. So the way that you would do it is select the whole stack object. You see the whole stack widget right here. And you can just cut it. I do like, control X to cut it. Like you can just cut it. And now I'll do clip R rect. and then make the stack the child of that clip rect. Now we know that the stack is the child of the clip rounded rectangle. That's what it stands for, clip R rect, this clip round rectangle. And then now apply border radius to it. Now I'll say to this stack, clip it as a rounded rectangle with some border radius. So I'm going to say border radius, that's circular. So you the circular radius, and then you apply a value on that radius. So I'll do like 25 pixels all around it. And then you provide the comma, and then now let's run it. So if you do that, now you will see that the stack is clipping actually everything. The image, the gradient, and even the text. You see like the text is even being clipped. So now in here, you have to say, okay, so I have to make a compromise. So I have to either move the text more inside because it's being clipped, or actually what the workshop is explaining, add padding around it. So the way that you add padding around it is very simple. Let's go back to our attraction card widget, find the column that contains the information. You have the column, and then you wrap it inside of a padding widget. So I'll cut it, add a padding widget, and then add padding to it. So I'll do like edge insets dot all, and then let's do 30 pixels all around the widget, add it back as a child of the padding. So if I don't have to save, of course, and then if I just run it, you will see now that when I add the padding, now the text kind of gets lifted up a little, and now you see it much better. So you see now how this is taking shape with very minimal amount of code, very little bit of strategy. You get like a lot of richness in your applications. And then you bring these like cool styles that you see out there in other applications. Like, man, I wish my application would look like that. You can. You just have to put the work in and learn these strategies. Great. Awesome. I love the way that it's taking shape. And now, last but not least, the bottom bar. So now we're working our way down. Now we're going to be creating the bottom bar of this application. So the bottom bar, some people even import it from libraries, but to be honest, I don't use those bottom bars. I actually create my own all the time, and then I just copy paste it. But again, much power to you. Whenever you're in a crunch time and you want to be productive, you can pull any of those already created. But what actually made me more proficient in Flutter is actually creating these things from scratch. Then all I do is I reuse it from project to project, and then I just tweak it little by little. So let's wrap this up by adding the bottom bar. So the bottom bar will be a widget where we will actually have like a couple of icons laid out in a horizontal fashion. And then when we click them, what we want is for them to change like state. You heard that I mentioned the word state, right? So state is actually something that you can do in Flutter to maintain, so that every time you make a change in your widget, let's say a click event, a user triggered event, the widget rebuilds, and then you see how the new state reflects, and then you see changes happening on your widget. Remember before when I said why we're creating this widget separate like that is because of the build method. Whenever you have everything inside the build method and a change happens, Flutter rebuilds the whole widget. Whatever is in the build method, it gets rebuilt. The reason then why you compartmentalize your widgets is so that the changes get centralized and only concentrated on a single build method. So that's why if anything changes in this bar, I don't want my header to change. I only want this bottom bar to re-render itself based on its new state so that I can see the change, as opposed to rendering the whole application for every single change. It's very cumbersome and very performance. It affects the performance of your application. So always keep that in mind. So let's proceed with the next widget. Is going to be a bottom widget. So let's go back to the landing page. And right here, I'm just going to say bottom bar widget. Again, you can call it anything, but I'm calling it bottom bar widget. So a bottom bar widget, it will be something that I'll be adding at the bottom. Now we're going to be adding this, and we're going to be maintaining state. So for creating a widget that maintains state, instead of making stateless, the name says it, we have to call it stateful. And when you create a stateful widget, you need two classes. So you need a class that extends stateful widget, and then the class that creates the state that is held in memory while the widget rebuilds. the state gets maintained for you because you don't want to redo the state. You only want to rebuild the widget. So that's one of the beauties of Flutter, and that's why it's so performance oriented. So I provided the code for you for these two classes so that we can expedite the development. You can just scroll all the way down and you can paste it anywhere here. So if you see, the bottom bar widget is composed of two classes because it's stateful. It has the stateful widget and the state. So here, the stateful widget creates the state, and then it creates one instance of that, while the main widget keeps rebuilding. It keeps reading the same state. You change the state is mutable, but the widget is immutable. That's also another term being thrown in Flutter as far as like widgets. Widgets are immutable. They don't change. You have to create a new one every time. That's why the build method gets called every time by the framework. And you don't have to be like in more imperative languages, you have to actually mutate the object and change the components, as opposed to the declarative approach of Flutter, where you change the whole state, and then it's much efficient that way. You know exactly what your application will be by passing the state, by passing the widget. So let's continue. So now let me run this just so that I can see that the bottom bar will be showing below. And there you go. So there's the thing that says bottom bar. So now I know that my bottom bar will be showing there. So let's proceed now to work further on this structure. So we're in step 10 already. We're almost wrapping up. Just wanted to show you that. And now also, just like in any other components and any other widgets, I want to create my model, a model that feeds, that maintains that state. Remember, I want to do something that I can hold in memory, and then I can change values on it. So I'm going to be creating a class, a poto object called bottom bar model. So I'll just paste it in here so you guys can see it. There you go. And then here it says it's called bottom bar model. So the bottom bar model has two properties, an icon and a flag, whether it's going to be selected or not. That's what I'm going to be changing and keeping track of, whether the particular item is selected or not. That's what we're keeping track of. And then now what you do is let's create a list of those guys. Inside of my state, I want to maintain that value. When this class gets created, when the state gets instantiated, I want to have this available to me so that I can pull information from that. So I'm going to be creating, just like in the code, a list of bottom bar models. And I'm going to be calling it bottom bar items. Right now I'm instantiating it with a just an empty array, but now I've already provided a chunk of code that provides like some mocked data for feeding it into the bottom bar widget. So let's grab that code that provides that mocked data. Let's just scroll all the way up and just add it along with the rest of our final properties in there, like our hard-coded stuff. So you see it's just a list of bottom bar models. These ones will be generating each widget, like each one of the icons, and every time I click, I will be responding to this flag, the one that's called is selected. And notice that by default, I'm going to have the top one, the first one being is selected equals true. And you'll see why. Let me show you back down. So let's go back down to the bottom bar widget. And then what I'm going to be doing is feeding that property in here. I could have used it straight up. I'm just going to feed it right here. So I'm going to be doing bottom bar list items. So now we're just feeding the top collection inside of this bottom bar widget state. So the state will maintain the state in memory while the widget will be rebuilding. Let's now build the structure further. So let's replace, let's add some properties to the container that I provided here as a default for you. So I'm going to add a margin to the container because if you see the design, the bar has like some padding around it and margin. So I'm going to be adding margin only top and bottom because I want to make it space it out a little. So I'll do edge insets that only, and I'm going to be adding only 20 pixels at the top, 20 pixels at the bottom. And let's add some padding now. So let's add padding, edge insets dot all. Let's add 20 pixels all around as padding for this widget. There you go. So far, so good. But you see the container still just has a child, that text widget. We want to add the items as a row. So the items will be laid out horizontally. That is a row widget. Okay. So let's replace this text widget by a row widget. And then let's add, so how do we want to lay them out? Do we want to lay them out all on the left, or on the right, or space them out automatically? That is the reason why we're going to be using these properties, cross-axis alignment, meaning vertically aligned in a row at the center. So let's type cross-axis alignment dot center. Good. And then now let's spread them apart without me even hard coding the spacing in between. There's a cool property in main axis alignment that you can do is main axis alignment space around. So that means it has spaces around my widgets without me, and then it does it in a very smart way. It does it automatically, and it distributes the space accordingly. So I'm just going to do space between, space around. I'm sorry, space around. And here is where we're going to be adding our children. So our children, when we automatically add them, they will be spread apart with space around them. Now I already provided like how we're going to be populating those children. Instead of hard coding them each one and adding them in list, let's do them automatically using this very convenient helper method from the list class called generate. Let me paste it in here. It's in there in step number 10 towards the bottom. And then you see here that the list class has this generate like factory method. What it does, you feed it you give a length, meaning how many times we're going to be generating items as a list out of any given collection. And then it gives you an index with a callback that it feeds it inside of that list.generate. So for every item in the list, in the list that you feed it, you can whatever length is going to generate one item. So it's kind of like the list view.builder, but this just generates a list. Let's proceed down, and then let's create let's actually further elaborate on this method. So remember, we're using that bar bottom bar items collection that we have above. So let's extract one item on each iteration. So let's hold there in a variable called bar item widget. And then I'm going to pick one, provided the index, I'm going to be providing the one in the current iteration. So I'm going to be saying bottom bar items, and then just fetch it out of the given index from this callback. So now I know that I'm in every iteration. Now for every iteration, I'm going to be creating an icon button. And remember that each one of these items has an icon data, and it has a property called isSelected. So I'm going to be using that to drive the rendering of each one of those bottom bar items. So I'm even making my bottom bar item not static, making it dynamic. You can maybe programmatically add items like based on user permissions, user roles, like you want to generate it like that, you can do so. So let's now return out of this method one widget. So let's return an icon button. Which, by the way, I've provided the whole code below for you if you've fallen behind a little. But I just want to type it out just for you so that you guys can see how I do this. So I do the icon button, and then you provide an icon. So you provide the icon, which is going to be feeding it's going to be extracting its values out of this bar item widget. So you do icon and pass the icon out of this the property icon out of the bar item widget. And then you pass also a color. Let's call it, now this is going to be driven by the logic. So the logic will say, if bar item widget is selected, then let's add the color main yellow. Otherwise, let's make it gray. So you see I'm using a ternary operator right in line that when I execute a trigger a change in this widget, this logic is going to run, and it's going to do it for every item again as it rebuilds. So let me show you how that gets done. So after I add my icon, of course, the icon button requires because this is a using a nullable property, I have to provide this value. And then now I'll just provide the onPressed event, which is required by every icon button. So if I just return just the way that I have it right now and I hit run, now you will see that in my row below, you will see all the icons already been rendered and they got rendered automatically. I just fed it the collection. And then now remember the property that says is selected equals true by default. So it's reflecting the logic. When it ran initially, it checked that value, but the value is static. Now we want to be able to change those values dynamically so as to trigger a rebuild in the widget. So for stateful widgets, every time you change the state, the widget rebuilds. That's how it operates. Every time you change the state, the widget rebuilds. So the next time is going to check, oh, is this selected? Oh, it's not selected. Okay, so let me change the other color. So every time you change the state, it rebuilds. So now how do you trigger a state change? There's a very special method, and you can see it already in the code lab that I'm providing. It is a special method provided by the library, by the Flutter framework, called set state. Anything that happens within these methods, within the method of set state, is the one that actually the system picks up as a change. After it performs all those changes, it calls the build method automatically for you. So after you hit on press, inside of the set state, you perform the changes, you don't have to tell it anything. The framework automatically calls the build method for you. You don't have to call it. So what we're going to be doing inside of the set state is what you would be expecting. When you click on one single button inside of the onPress event, that's what we're doing. When you click on one button, you change the state of your collection and then trigger a rebuild. So what we want to do is loop through all the items. And then you do a for each, for example, like do a for each on every each one of the elements in the collection. And then inside of your for each, what you do is, if you mark it as selected, look, you mark it as selected when it's equals to the one that you have just tapped. So I just compare the element with the existing item in here in this iteration. So I'll use bar item widget. If the bar item widget is the one that I've tapped, that I've hit on press, I'll mark it as true. Otherwise, it will be false. So now let me show you. When I click the on press on the button, it will trigger a change. The widget will rebuild. So now if I hit run, exactly. So you always want the model changes to update the appropriate views. That's exactly why I'm concentrating it in the build method of that bottom bar. Now, if I do it here, look, when I change, if I click, you see now the items changing colors, because every time I'm clicking, I'm rebuilding just that widget, not the whole page, just that widget. And then if you click, I'm changing state. See, I'm changing the state, meaning flip them all to true and only the one that I'm selecting to, flip them all to false and then only me to true. And then that's how it does it. Very cool. Very nice. So you see now how in a short amount of time, we were able to go through the whole tutorial, the whole code lab. I would invite you to even do the bonus. I already provided the code in the code, a link, like a secret link, where you could go and complete the next part of this code lab if you decide to do so on your own. If you want to learn more about the techniques that we just explored in here. But yeah, that's about it. This was the workshop. We concentrated it only on UI layout, but I'm coming up with more workshops concentrated in Flutter around, again, state management, responsive design, pulling data from RESTful APIs, and some of those. So let me just wrap up here with some of the last slides that I have for you. And I would invite you to join me again on Slido so that we can do just a little bit of live quizzes to kind of gauge a couple of the things that you gained through this workshop. Let's test a little bit of that knowledge in just a few questions that I'm going to be asking you. How does that sound? So so I would encourage you to join at slido.com with the code 491853. and then let's gauge your knowledge. Let's take a look. So the first question, if you recall from what we went over just now, what's the most important method in a Flutter app? I believe I mentioned it a couple of times. Let's see what you think. What the most important method in a Flutter app is? Is it the main method? Is it the run app method? Or is it the build method? So which of the methods in a Flutter application is the most important method in a Flutter app? So let's see how many people are doing. So people are saying the main method. No one has says run app. No one has says build. I'll just give you a few seconds. The most important method in a Flutter app is, let's proceed. Correct, the main method. So if you saw in the code, the main method was the most important method because it's the one that actually bootstraps the whole application. The second most important is the run app method because it's the one that then inserts the main application widget into the widget tree. Now, what is the most important method in a widget? Not on the application per se, but now we're digging into each individual custom widget. So which is the most important method in a Flutter widget, in the widget itself? So we created custom widgets, remember, extending the classes like stateful and stateless. So for you, what is the most important method in a Flutter widget? Is it the init state method? Is it the constructor method? Or is it the build method? Let's see what people are saying. So no one has said init, no one said the constructor, and a lot of people said the build method. So the most important method in a Flutter widget is, correct, the build method. That is exactly why I splitted the widgets and I accomplished widget composition as opposed to building, which I could have done, the whole application in a single build method. Any changes that I would have made in any part of the application would have triggered a rebuild in the whole application. So that is one of the things in there. So thank you for that. Which of the following widgets takes more than one child, has a children property? So which one of these widgets you recall has more than one? More than one. Is it the container? Is it the stack? Or is it the align widget? So which one of the following widgets, the container, stack, or align, has more than one? Has more than one widget. So let's see what people are saying. People are saying container. People are saying stack. So one of these widgets, container, stack, or align, has more than one. Let's see which one. The stack. So the stack has a children property because you can add them in a layered fashion. The container can only take one child, but that child could be a stack. That's why maybe the question should have been framed. Okay, maybe which one of these only takes a single and only child as the immediate child, maybe. But yeah, the container can only take one child, but that child could be a stack, which has more than one. But the stack is the one that actually has children property. Which one of the following widgets align its children one on top of each other in a layered fashion? And I think I already gave it to you. So which one of the following widgets, either the stack, column, or row, stacks them or lays them out in a layered fashion? In a layered fashion. Is it the stack? Is it the column? Or is it the row? So which one for you think does that? Let's see what people are saying. People are saying stack. And the answer is stack, correctly. So stack adds it in a layered fashion, like one on top of each other. That's how you get like that effect, like you can stack them up one in front of each other. Which widget aligns its children vertically? So you have the column, you have the stack, or you have the row. Which one does it vertically? I mean, even if I do this, you already know it's vertically. So I'm already giving it to you. But at least I wanted to gauge from you the knowledge that you got on the core widgets, which are very important. So which widget aligns its children vertically? People are saying column or row. Remember, vertically it goes up and down. So which one does it? Column, stack, or row? So the ones that does it vertically, meaning up and down, is the column. The column goes up and down, and then it adds them one on top of each other, as opposed to like a stack. But it does it one here, one here, one here. So column does it vertically. Which widget you can use to add margin to a child widget? Remember we tried adding like margins and paddings to widgets? You recall like some widgets that we use for that. So which one out of these three adds margin to a child widget? Whatever widget you have inside, and then you wrap it inside another one, this one. Which one of those adds margin to a child widget? Is it a margin widget? Does it even exist? Is it the container widget? Or is the constrained widget? So let's think, what do you think? Which one of the three widgets, of these widgets, adds margin to a child widget? Let's see what people are saying. People are saying the container widget. And the correct answer is the container widget. Container widget, margin doesn't exist. Constraint doesn't exist. I mean, the constraint widget doesn't exist. There's a like safe area widgets that are some that provide constraint, but the container widget is the only one that adds margin to a child widget. And this question, to kind of wrap things up, everything in Flutter is a widget, true or false? Is everything in Flutter a widget, true or false? You heard me saying it a couple of times. I want to see what people say. Everything in Flutter is a widget, and I know what Randall might say if he's still here. So yeah, yes. So let's see. Everything in Flutter is a widget, true. True with asterisks. Everything in Flutter is a widget, but for example, you saw other widgets that didn't render anything visible. But the mantra from Google, from the Flutter framework, they say everything in Flutter is a widget because pretty much everything is a widget, but not everything, because you have like HTTP classes, you have the provider widgets, you have the main method, you have the run app method, but those things are not widgets, but they facilitate the creation of widgets and they facilitate building your applications. But not everything is a widget. But if you use the mentality of almost everything is a widget and you follow Google's mentality, yes, everything in Flutter is a widget. And then that's it. Randall, you won if there was a competition. And then that's it, guys. I just wanted to wrap up here by just saying, please subscribe to my exactly visible widgets are widgets, exactly whatever gets rendered on the screen. So please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I constantly post in there. I'm going to be doing some live streaming on these series, this special sessions. You can visit in my portfolio site, or you can follow me in Twitter at DRCoders. You can follow me there at DRCoders. And that's it, guys. I thank you again, Dan. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, everyone, for sticking all the way through. I hope I didn't bore you too much during this session, but I definitely appreciate this opportunity, and I'll continue doing it because I'm really passionate about sharing. So thank you so much, guys, for the opportunity.
That was great, Roman. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here, and I really enjoyed the workshop. So thank you. Don't know if I like the quiz at the end, but hey, that's okay. Anyway, thank you so much. It was really great to have you here. And to wrap things up, that is pretty much the event. So that is the end of our IO Extended. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I really appreciate. Rustam, great keynote. Thank you so much. And Roman, awesome workshop. Thank you. And I'm glad we got to get our little bit of socialization time in there. So please do make sure, if you haven't already, provide your information for the t-shirts and upcoming events, just to let you know what's going on with GDG Tucson. And then I'll give Jennifer the same opportunity. And actually, Roman or Rustam, if you have anything you'd like to share as well, I certainly welcome you to do that. Coming up with GDG Tucson, this is actually something that the developer ecosystem for Google is doing. They are hosting some Android workshops. And so that has been posted on the GDG Tucson webpage, but it's available to anyone. It's actually going to be done by the developer ecosystem. The first one is July 29th, and that's building your first Android application. So if you want to dive into Android a little bit, that would be the way to go. Also, of course, on the 31st, we've got the next in the sustainability series for GDG Tucson. So check that out on the community page if you're interested in that. And look for something about DevFest. We will be doing something similar. We're going to do a region-wide DevFest. It'll be a little bit later in the year, but just keep an eye on the community page. Hopefully you're all subscribed to that now so that you can catch any announcements as they come out. And Jennifer, I'll let you make any announcements you have.
I'm with you on the same page with the Mountain Region Dev Fest, and we'll be continuing to have our Android, and I hope to have a special event for Android Study Jam in the fall, or in the August, excuse me.
And then Rustam or Roman, either one of you like to make any announcements?
My end, I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity. Love these type of collaborations. Rustam, I'll probably ping you offline, but these are the type of events that definitely we should continue doing with the high quality that you guys are providing it and the great professionalism. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you for contributing. We couldn't have done it without you. So Rustam and Roman, thank you both. And of course, Randall, for all of the feedback in the chat. Thank you very much. And everyone else who's been here, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. I know it wasn't a huge turnout, but it was really nice to see the engagement and to have you all here. And I hope, again, that you'll be keeping an eye out for the Mountain Region Dev Fest coming in the fall.